are listening to the B2B Marketing Mindset with Pete Monfre and Bill Lowell. We want to help demystify marketing to reduce risk, drive more and better opportunities, and grow your business. Are you ready to master marketing?
Sometimes I just like grooving on that music that we got. Hey, I'm Pete Monfre. Let's get into the B2B marketing mindset, shall we? So today's topic, it's a trigger warning for my co-hosts. So stay tuned as we set the record straight on a terrible business practice that just it won't die. And I'm not talking about having a fifth of scotch in your desk drawer, right? That's still well alive and good. We're talking about RFPs and how to set up a lose-lose dynamic for the buyer and the seller. And they're great for buying paper clips and desks and Toyotas, right? But if you sell expertise, RFPs are a disaster. If you're buying expertise, they're a disaster. We're going to tell you why. But first, welcome Bill Lowell. Bill Lowell.
Thanks, Pete. I'm glad to be here. So thank you so much. Like you said, trigger warning. Usually I'm pretty calm. Today, I don't think I can be.
I understand you do have some possibly strong feelings on this topic.
Just a few.
It's a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. And I've written an article about it in the past, and so my position will tell you about it in a few minutes, but you'll certainly know about it. So,
well, and our goal today is to have some fun, but also to hopefully help you learn from our mistakes. We have a lot of experience with the RFP process. We'll talk about the different kinds and what that dynamic is. But basically, if you're considering an RFP, using one to buy marketing services or management consulting or some kind of expertise, or if you're a service business and you're tempted to respond, we're going to show you how you're getting screwed no matter what side of the table you're sitting on. Now, we're going to share why companies use them and a better way to hire expertise. And we've got some really good advice for sellers as far as how you should deal with RFPs if they come into your house. And as always, we want you to benefit from the pain that we've experienced over the years. And maybe you can avoid the mistakes that we've made. Because, we used to do these things.
And they're
20 years
prevalent.
ago.
I mean, there's a lot of organizations, just like you said. I mean, the marketing world's filled with them, advertising's filled with them, public relations, the construction industry, architectural community, accounting firms. I mean, so everybody, gets them or utilizes them, but we'll discuss why. Why?
Well, at least what are they thinking, right? I mean, when you hear about the practice, it sounds just barbaric, right? And we don't think the people are doing this on purpose. There might be a few of them out there who are doing it on purpose, but most people, they don't understand how to buy expertise. I think this is more a symptom of just not really understanding how to not just buy expertise, but how to buy it and leverage it, right? But then again, the person for the firm or firms, did you just say that you've heard that sometimes a company will send an RFP to up to 20, did you say, right before the program?
I've had it where I just, because I want to humor myself. So sometimes somebody would send me one and I would just ask, how many people have you sent this to? And I've had people say anywhere from 6 to 20. I mean, and I just start laughing my head off because it's like, what are we thinking? We're in Las Vegas, It's so dumb.
I've talked on this topic before, and I always say 6, but I just have forgotten. I've blocked a lot of it out of my head, my brain. I had to memory block it. My experiences with RFPs, but
I've had it where companies even send like a pre-letter saying we're going to be sending you one. Watch for it. You know what I mean? And then, like it's so special. So well, that's. The trigger warning is right. In my opinion, I think the organizations that utilize them, they're just arrogant. I mean, they're thinking like, oh, everybody wants to work with us, so we're going to send out 20 and see who gives us the lowest price. I mean, to me, what an idiotic approach, Well,
that's some strong language, friend.
I can't take it. I just can't take it.
Well, let's. I wanted to. My screen just went black for a second, so hopefully we're still broadcasting.
The people are. The censors are getting us.
They're
The
starting to come
sponsors are
after
after
us.
us. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so let's first, before we dive in, let's explain it. Tell us a little bit about the RFP, what we mean when we say RFP process, request for proposal,
Right.
and what's the difference between that and an RFQ or some other form of it. There are different
Gotcha.
forms of this,
Yeah,
right?
there are. There
Tell
are.
us about that.
The RFP process is like we talked about. Somebody puts together what they're wanting to buy or purchase or whatever the case is. And I think we're going to get into this in just a second. They put down to their best of their knowledge what they are wanting, their expectations, the deliverables, which has just so many things wrong with it. And then they send it out to a bunch of people. Sometimes, yes, they might do some research on who they send it out to. Sometimes they don't, but the bottom line is usually it's price driven for the request for proposal.
Right.
That's my thought.
I would throw in there that to me, a request for qualifications is a different animal.
Yeah,
I
and
would
probably
say
a little
that
bit
that
better.
could be useful. I'm not
Yeah,
sure I'd even respond to those, but we'll get into that.
yeah,
But if it includes any kind of sort of recommendations, your professional recommendations and
yeah.
pricing, if it has those two elements, it's definitely a request for proposal by
Right.
definition. If it's a request for information or qualification, it's usually going to have a lot of the buyer's information in there, some discovery
Ex-
in there, right? And then they
Exactly.
also have a Q&A session. Almost all of them have a Q&A session. Now, whether they answer your questions or not, that's
Yeah.
another. But there's no way that I've found, and again, we've participated in this, and this is a couple decades ago. This started to become prevalent in the marketing firm industry,
Yeah.
and we realized we only won about 1 in 10, and they would take about 20 to 30 hours to tell them everything about everything. I mean,
Yeah.
very invasive very often, and a lot of times there was just no way to really get a good understanding of the client's business, and so it was very you end up guessing. So that's the kind of recommendations you're getting.
And sometimes this didn't happen a lot, but sometimes the organizations are so bad that are giving and I'll tell you one more concept too in just a second, but they're so bad that they sometimes get all of the people together in one room. So you might have every
Oh,
architect that's going to be bidding on this project all, so like who in their right mind, first of all, would attend that? But second of all, if you did attend, you can't ask any good questions because your approach is, I mean, you're going to give something away to the competition. So again, you're setting yourself up for failure. Sometimes though I've seen it where, because like I work a lot with associations too, sometimes the board requires them to get two
right.
or three bids. Sometimes in government they require that, but I think there's much better ways to go about that.
Well, this is why you have the RFQ instead. I
Yep.
mean, I know I'd love to ask for free advice from people I don't know. That sounds like I don't think I'm going to get very good advice. And also, when you think about this, I don't know any successful or established firm or consultant. I'm talking sometimes, they're individuals that have been doing this for many years that they won't respond. What you're going to get is you're going to get amateurs and you're going to get
Yes.
desperate amateurs, or you're going to get the guys that wrote the RFP. That was the thing that we
Yes.
found out after many years of wasted time and tears.
Yeah.
There's a scam there. So when we learned about the scam, we stopped doing it. We haven't, we don't respond to RFPs as a matter of policy as a company. And I don't know anyone that does. That's really that. If you're busy in your business, you can't. I mean, it isn't. We don't take it personally. Well, sometimes we do. Bill does, but it's. But just from a business standpoint, it's very time consuming, and you're much of the time it is kind of a rigged game. But we'll talk about that some more. But I hope that if you're considering doing this, listen up. We're just going to share our experience. You might disagree. Head to the comments and let us know what you think. Are you in an industry you are convinced that you have to do RFPs? Maybe not, right? Maybe you're just locked into a way of thinking. But we're going to give you some advice on how to deal with that. And also, if you're thinking about this and you don't understand the dynamic on how it boomerangs back in your face, we'll share a little bit more about that. So,
One of the things that I think before we move to the next point, that
Sure.
if somebody's not familiar with it, sometimes, you request from these 6 to 20 people throw in their proposals, their suggestions, their bids. Sometimes they'll bring it down to 2 or 3 people, and then they'll bring them in person, and you have a little bit better of a chance to do some persuading, but it's still odds that I don't think people want to go with. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, but let's go on.
No, you're good. We haven't even got to the first point yet, but that actually is a great segue to the first point, which is, why do companies use these things? I don't think they do it because they're trying to exploit amateurs or anything like that. I don't think it's on purpose. I'm going to give people the faith that it's not. They are trying to probably see what the best price is. They're very price driven, and
Yeah.
RFPs, what they do, if you're a seller, it reduces all of your expertise and experience. All of that, it comes just, there's only one thing left to evaluate, and it's price. They've self-prescribed the answers. So your expertise, what does it mean? They've already decided how to, hey, doc, I keep getting these terrible headaches. I need you to cut my leg off. How much? I mean, that's
Yeah.
the RFP, right? And so you're reduced to that. But why do
You
they
know,
use them? I think they're trying to level the playing field. It's logical if you think about it. If it worked, it would be logical. You'd be like, well, let's make sure we're standardizing what we're buying so that we can compare our options. That sounds completely reasonable to me, Bill. Why are you so angry? See, I set you up there. I put
you
the ball and whatever that's called, and you were going to spike it.
you know, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, because you said you think some companies have good intentions, and I would think that and hope that the majority of them do. But a couple of things. One, sometimes they are just trying to see how competitive is my person. You know what I mean? The organization that we're working with. So they might throw it out to test them to see. So sometimes it's that way. Like I said, sometimes a board or the top executives require at least 2 other bids, 3 other bids, or something like that. So, it's a competitive game. But the one thing that just absolutely drives me crazy is, Pete, how many times do marketing people, and you and I, how many times do we talk about branding and positioning? So if we
All the
spend
time.
all of this energy and work putting together our positioning of what makes us different, because like we're just great in customer service and quality, I'm teasing, but if what's that one or
Right.
two things that makes
We're
us
great.
unique in the marketplace, and then all of a sudden now everybody's just reduced it to price. It's like you said, it's that one. I mean,
Nothing
it's
counts. Nothing matters except for your
no,
price. And who wants to be evaluated on that? The other thing is, if you're a seller, do you want an even playing field? Don't you want the opposite of that? You want the playing field tipped. I want it tipped right into my mouth. Right? I mean,
yes,
I want that
yeah,
playing field just going right in my garbage hole. But it's uh,
I so much agree with that.
it seems logical though on the surface, right? But it's like the intention is different. I mean, the road to hell, right? What is it paved with? Good
Yeah,
intention.
yeah,
But the other thing I think some people don't understand, that it's generally okay for business people to abuse salespeople and abuse their time. Yes, you think
yeah.
generally acceptable. Uh,
It's unfair, but it is.
right. So they don't. It's just a way of doing business, right? It's just doing business. But
Yeah,
really, if you're wasting 30 hours of times of usually small, even emerging companies, because they're the only ones that will fall for this, and they'll put that time in and not get paid for it and go out of business eventually if they keep doing it. But I don't think it's on purpose. I think it's more like it's just very, very wasteful for all those companies. But business people aren't thinking like that. But you should, because that's the reality of what's happening. And yes, you could choose to participate if you want. Nobody's forcing any of those companies to do it. We're hoping
right.
you'll see the logic. But I think that's why clients do it. Is there's also this thing about marketing, how tell us what to do. Like, you're experts, right? You should be able to tell, and then it's some very specific narrow niche type of business what they should do. So, as we repeat often, just because it worked for previous clients similar to you, because
Yeah,
if we didn't have any experience in your business, we wouldn't be talking to you.
right.
um, so but there's nobody going to be exactly like you. So I want to make recommendations that that have a basis in data and fact, that
Right.
have the best likelihood to be successful. Can't do it with an RFP process. I have to give you garbage recommendations.
One of our clients, his name was Jim Rashi. He was one of the CEOs of probably one of the largest and best architectural firms in the country. Just a great guy. But he gave the quote that said, "Low bid or the RFP process allows the market to define the lowest expectation of the project or product." The lowest expect. I mean, and to me, that says it all. It's like you've just entered. If you fill out an RFP as an organization, you've just entered the race to the bottom, as far as I'm concerned.
That's a phrase I hear a lot when this topic is brought up. So, if you're using these things, you might not realize that what you're going to get, if you're asking for people to propose solutions, but they don't have a really solid understanding of your business, which is called discovery, and professionals won't skip discovery. And so, if I don't really know much about your company, and we did just get an RFP not too long ago, which maybe triggered this episode. We literally knew almost nothing about their business and even their size and what their objective was, or they just it was it they I think they felt like it had enough information, but it had almost nothing in it. And it would have probably taken us 25 or 30 hours to respond to what they asked for. And I'll share a little bit of that, but I'm not as offended by that as I always want to do good work and do the best thing for the client. And so, and I feel like clients don't pay us to guess. They
Right.
pay us to give them our best hypothesis. Just like a doctor wouldn't diagnose something without diagnostic information. That would be malpractice. It is for us too. Now, a younger firm, new firm, they might not understand it yet, and a lot of clients don't understand. There is process involved, and it's so that you can leverage our advice.
And in all fairness,
Excuse me.
we're talking about service-oriented business, but there probably are some places where it could work, like you talked about, paper clips, furniture, office furniture. I mean, there are things where you're already in a commoditized business that then fine if price is your only driving factor. So I mean, I'm not badgering all the procurement officers out there, because
Right.
that's probably what they do.
That's durable goods. I think this
Yes.
is an important thing. So and when we're talking about this, we're talking about specifically using it to buy expertise, right?
Yeah.
And again, my position is that people come from a place where they just not sure how to evaluate expertise. And look, it's hard. We used to, we did a lot of hiring back in the day, and we used to go through a lot of effort trying to predict somebody's performance. We found out we had to employ them for some short period of time, and then we could quickly see who was, whose portfolio wasn't theirs, and whether they could perform or not. But I think for clients or for sellers, it's easy to get scammed with RFPs.
Yeah.
And so it's just, you're getting a garbage quality output from it. And I would be hesitant to make decisions on that. And I don't think it puts them in the best light either as a company. It is inherently exploitive if you think about it. Those 6 other companies, those 19 other companies are going to eat 30 hours.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what 30 times 19 is. A lot. I think there's an ethics question here that comes into play, and ignorance of the law is no excuse.
Right. I love it. Yeah.
It's okay if you don't understand. That's why we wanted to make this video, so that people can understand the whole picture. So, so it's not a good practice to use an RFP. Is you agree with that?
I do. Are we going to chat about why it's
maintaining
not
your
good?
calm.
I'm doing the best I can. Do you want to talk about why it's not best for the organization? Should I?
Well,
talk
yeah,
a little
that's
bit
the
about
topic. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That's point number
Let
one.
me-
Why do they use them? And
Yep.
I guess wait a minute. Are we at the next? Yeah. Why are they
Yeah.
bad for buyers? I forgot to
Okay,
forward the
that's okay.
slide.
That's okay. Well, let me address that a little bit too, because that's kind of where you've been going with this, I think. Okay. If you're all right with that, I'll kind
Yeah,
of
no,
move on.
please do. Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know,
Getting
one of the
messages in
things,
here live because we're
okay, we're
live,
get
but
we're getting live comments. People are yelling at us. Okay.
or
Um,
texting me.
yeah. One of the things that I think that one of the reasons why it's bad is we talked about this. It kind of is bad for your reputation. You start sending out these things. It's just like an employer. You know what I mean? It's like you said, doing the hiring process. You start interviewing all these people, and then you're rejecting them or things aren't working out. You get a bad reputation for turnover. So it's like, so that's one thing. But the second thing I think that's really important is you don't, if it's strictly on price, you're not building the relationship at all. I mean, and to me, that relationship is so important because as friends, we're going to do things for each other. But if it's just that we're a vendor and it's just price driven, well, screw that noise. We're just going to leverage and do all kinds of things. And like you talked about, there's a shell game that goes all the time. I mean, there's so many ways to beat the system that people just don't have
Right.
a clue about.
It is possible to get good at doing RFPs if you throw
Yeah.
away business ethics. Like if
Yes.
you can take those things and spin them a million ways, and the client is going to end up paying a lot more, but by the time they figure it out, it's too late. But usually what happens, this is the scam that we found that forced us to quit the practice. We're like, listen, 20 years ago, we made a policy so that RFPs go straight to the trash bin. Not even onto my desk. My assistant throws your RFP away, but the companies that do respond, um, they're just going to be making things up, or you mentioned boilerplate.
Yeah.
And then that information, which is really work product, they're giving away their work. There might be some gem in there, who knows? But the client's going to take all of that and mix it together. And we found the scam was the company that wins most RFP processes is the company that helped write the RFP.
Yeah.
You were never going to win that job. You were there to show the board, who should be educated too, because it's
Yeah.
just a terrible way to buy expertise. You're going to get lousy expertise. Good for you. But it doesn't serve the purpose. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally does. It totally does. So, and like you said, I mean, this could be just an episode in itself, Pete, but I could give you 100 ways that we could scam a system on an RFP where we could come in with the lowest bid, but all of a sudden, you know what I mean? There are just so many ways to do the add-ons or the extras that by the time people are done, they're probably going to be paying twice as much and not have the value. The other reason that it's so bad is, and you and I have talked about this, you're not getting our true expertise because
Right.
if you're throwing something out there boilerplate, I'm talking about the organization where it's like, okay, these are the things we're expecting, and somebody else is responding in boilerplate. Throw out the creativity, throw out the problem solving, throw out the relationship. Exactly.
Experience. I mean, we were just talking about, this is a totally different subject. We were talking about how many times has the average corporate denizen, even at a very high level, how many marketing plans do you think they've implemented in their career? 10? 5?
Yeah.
15?
Yeah.
We're in the hundreds, like people that specialize, right? That this is what we
Yeah.
do. We're in the hundreds. So you're prescribing all of the answers, skipping that person's experience and entire life's knowledge.
Exactly.
Because you've used ChatGPT nowadays
There you go.
to write it. So
that's the answer.
But let's get on to the next topic. But first, I wanted to tell people, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to B2B Marketing Mindset. There's lots of great information. You can just subscribe on Spotify, but you'll want to head over to b2bmarketingmindset.com. You're going to find a ton of easy to consume content, very tasty, delicious content with everything you ever wanted to know about B2B marketing, but we're too socially awkward to ask. So go check that out. And if you miss an episode, you can always see it there. It will show up there by the next day. And then, of course, it goes out to everywhere fine podcasts are consumed. Now, why are they bad for service providers, sellers of expertise? Why are they bad for those sellers? We've hit on a couple things, but
yeah, we have. Are you asking me, or is
Yeah,
this a
go ahead.
rhetorical question?
Hey, I don't want to.
I didn't know if that was a rhetorical question that you were going to go ahead and
I
answer
can
that.
talk until hear myself talk all day.
Yeah, I, for so many reasons, I guess I'm going to get on my high horse here. First of all, if I'm going to spend 30 hours and I'm going to do all that kind of stuff for a lottery ticket, I might as well go play the lottery. But there's so many other ways that I could use that resource, that money. I mean, take those 30 hours and go out and visit a customer, and you probably come back with some more work because they're going to probably tell you something that they need to have done.
Right.
Go out and do something else, spend some more money in some other area that's going to make a difference for you. You're blowing the money by even chasing after that kind of stuff. So it's kind of silly.
It's costly. So it's costly. And if you've owned a business for any period of time or run a business, you know that if you, let's say you lose 30 hours of labor, you have to bring in almost 90 hours of labor to replace it.
Right.
Right. And a lot of people don't get that. Maybe they don't understand their costs very well, but it's a big cost. So it's just, that's one of the big reasons why it's going to hurt you if you're a responder to this thing. And you might need to work really bad, man. I get it. Right? You got to separate that thought process. You got to think, you know what? We got millions in the bank. We don't need this business.
Right.
There should be no relationship to it, because if you engage in the practice, I think we predicted about a 1 in 10 win rate.
If that,
that is gambling. Okay. So
Yeah.
if you want to gamble, it's your firm. You do what you want.
The other thing too, Pete, that people don't realize is you just gave up your intellectual property, because even if you're putting out even stuff that's not quite up to your standard because it's an RFP process, somebody is going to steal. For those 9 that didn't get selected, somebody is, and most likely it's your competitor that got the job, that wrote the RFP. They're stealing all of your stuff anyhow. And so all of a sudden you're going to see your ideas, and you're going to go, oh my, I can't believe I just gave them all this great stuff, this great thinking, and now it's stolen.
Well, this great thinking I pulled out of my ear.
Yeah.
It can't be that great.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, I think it's there's so many aspects that don't immediately come to mind, and I suppose that's why we're talking about it. You're also playing this really super evil game that I hate, and it's called What is in My Head. Let's everybody play What is in My Head.
I love
Would you like to try, Bill? Try your What is in my head? I'm thinking of a budget.
Okay.
I'm going to ask 12 people to do a shitload of research. And then they're going to guess what's in my head. It's going to be on ABC. It's coming up.
It's beautiful.
I know. I'm looking forward to it.
I love it. And even if I guessed it correctly, you'd probably tell me I was wrong, and you're going to give it to your person next door because they're going to get the job instead of me. So
I would say my number's much lower. It doesn't matter what number you say, because this is the other thing that's bad for sellers. It reduces everything you've done, everything that makes you valuable. It's removed all of it. And now you are only as good as your price. And it doesn't matter what they say. By the way, this last thing that we received, it didn't have what the selection criteria was.
Oh, geez.
I mean, it's just like, I'm not sure why anybody would put any time into that, and except for the incumbent firms that already know everything. And again, it's if the client is doing it on purpose, and I don't think this client was, to be honest. They're nice people. The CEO is a friend of mine. She's super sweet. I think the board, it's a quasi-government thing. I think it's that kind of situation. But I wish I could help, because we could have really helped, right? But under the circumstances, of course, we had to decline. But
you just mentioned something else though that I think is so important. If you have a relationship with that person, if they would have just come to you and said, Pete, this is our, help us to solve this, even if it was like, we'll pay for your ideas, even if we don't use, but then you're going to bend over backwards probably to really, really help them and give them your best.
We will anyway. That's just the way that we work. But that is the sad part, because we were very uniquely qualified to help solve their specific problem. As much as we knew about it, we knew very little about it, because what we really want, before any of us goes spending 30 hours, either you or us, we'd like to do is have a phone call with the people that are involved in making the decision and have
Exactly.
all of them there. And if I can't talk to decision makers, like for example, having someone take your stuff and then go represent it to some third parties.
Yeah.
The reason I can't do that is, again, it comes back to the odds, the amount of time that will never work. It never has worked. And I am a Sandler sales trained guy for almost 2 decades of doing Sandler. And deals where you're not talking to decision makers, you're talking to people who can only say no, they can't say yes, they don't know you from Adam. They may have a completely different idea than the decision maker you did talk to. Never going to close. And so, again, lots of time. And I want to just share, not to beat this to death, but I think this is, look at this part of an RFP. Now, Bill, you can't see it, but
You're going to have to
viewers can.
explain it though, because for some of our people on Amazon or iHeart or some of the other
That's true.
podcast
If
things,
you're
you might want to at least
listening,
tell them what it's saying here.
Bill reminds me often that people are just listening, but it's section 5, pricing and cost proposal, it says. So this is, remember, this is section 5 of this thing, by the way. All right. Provide a detailed narrative of your proposed estimate for all costs associated with the services you are proposing and any potential fees that may incur over the length of the contract, including but not limited to the startup and implementation fees, license fees, and ongoing maintenance fees. Summarize all costs using a matrix table and showing clear breakdown of all itemized costs. All costs must be accounted for. Each cost item must include a short description of the cost per unit quantity and be identified as upfront one-time cost or annual ongoing cost, fixed or variable cost. For variable costs, note the factors that impact or trigger variable costs, base service feature, and add-on service feature. For add-on service feature, note the additional costs if selected by beep. I believe I have just been asked for the impossible, sir.
Exactly. And by the way, it sounds like some lawyer added some of that crap in there too, because that's, it's like,
I was thinking to myself, let me get right on this. I see I have 10 days according to you.
Well, actually, that's another really good point. Sometimes the deadlines are so ridiculous, they'll put something in and then say, and we want this completed by this date, and you just have to roll over laughing so hard that you can't stand up anymore,
And I care very much for the person who is trapped, I'm sure, by the bureaucracy. And so I know that it's not, I want to be clear about that. We're making fun, yes. But it's serious. I mean, it's like I would have much rather said, hey, I would love to help you. We'd be well on our way to solving their problem. It's not that complex for us. Of course, they're struggling with it. That's why we have a job. And so
by the way,
it could have been such a great outcome, to be honest.
And you offer a guarantee. So it's like they're not going to lose,
It's really... But we never had the conversation, so you'd never know that. And so let's talk, let's close this loop here a little bit and talk about what's a better way. Because, hey, in the defense, it is wickedly hard to hire expertise, all right? Like if I was going to go out tomorrow and hire like a paleontologist, I'm not sure I would know what questions to ask.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's tough. So what do you recommend in that area?
I have 4 recommendations. So
I thought you might.
Your idea about the RFQ is not a bad idea. So, where you request people's qualifications and then you decide out of that if there's 1 or 2 people you want to bring in to talk to. But don't bring it to anything on price or methodology or anything at that point. So that's one. The other thing that I think is so important would be, you just talked about paleontologists. I would check with the local association or their trade group and see who do they suggest, or get some names, right?
Yeah. Hey, there are people out there to help you choose agencies, for example, and marketing firms. In fact, we do that all the time as part of our marketing X-ray, where we look into what is going on with your marketing and we fix it. And a lot of times it involves at some point, leveraging our experience of that agency industry and culture to help you make a good decision, right? You might not have the expertise in-house to make a good decision. An RFQ or an RFP is not going to help you, but bringing in it temporarily can really help you. And RFQs, by the way, those can be mostly canned. And so you can bang out an RFQ in a couple hours, and most places are willing to do that because we do appreciate the opportunity. I think that's super important to mention.
Yeah.
But so an RFQ, if it's somebody I don't know, I'm probably not going to answer that either. But and here's the other thing: isn't this all kind of lazy?
Yes.
Because all of this information, you go to my LinkedIn profile, and you're going to learn all about my background and who I've worked for and what I do. And if you want to see references, we have dozens and dozens of them on LinkedIn. We have rich websites. If you wanted to, you could go. But I know if you're asking 12 companies, that's a lot of work. Maybe that's part of the problem. Don't ask 12 companies. So how to hire expertise? Don't ask
I like
12
your idea.
companies.
Do a little research. I mean, isn't that what you would do for any good decision? So it's like, do a little research and find out who are some of the better known and the better ones that have great reputations that can help,
Ask a colleague to refer someone. What else?
I think, because I'm asked a lot, and I know you are too, but ask an advisor, so it could be your accounting firm, it could be your marketing person, it could be somebody else that you respect and that's working with you. It might be your financial advisor. I mean, who else do you know? And then even asking them, who do you use? So it could even be a colleague that's similar to the business and say, who do you recommend? So that's key. The other thing that would be good is, and maybe this might be a little bit out there, but in the hiring business, sometimes if it gets too complicated, you hire an executive search firm to go out and find somebody for you. Maybe you do that. Maybe you pick somebody with some marketing expertise and you pay them to go out and find, if it's whatever, you pick the industry. If it's in construction, you find somebody in construction to do it. If it's architecture, you do that. If it's public, find somebody that has some knowledge, let them go out objectively and bring you back the best selection. In my opinion, that I think is probably, it's a little bit more costly, but it's probably the best way to go.
Well, costly is getting a bunch of bad information and recommendations, and really costly is falling in love with one of those bad recommendations. And that does happen as well. So, I wanted to include how to respond to an RFP.
Good.
And
I can help
because
with that.
if you're a seller of expertise, we want you to get some value from this as well. So how to respond? What's your advice to companies that maybe they're already responding and they're doing the grind and they're putting these things out? They're probably getting pretty frustrated because they're not winning any. They don't know the scam
like
yet.
Like you, if any come in the door, I don't care what. I either ignore them or toss them. So I don't even respond. I haven't for many, many, many years. But when I was really interested in getting more business, I might send a nice letter or an email back and just say, you're asking for this, this, and this. And I might even tell them your deadline, from my experience, is so ridiculous, it's silly. Good luck with your project or your selection process. But if for some chance you are not able to find somebody, I would love to have a conversation.
Yeah, leave the door open. You can decline it. That's okay. I try to let them know why I'm declining it. But I guess one way to respond is to write the RFP. Right?
Okay.
Like that would be, because who's going to fill it out? It's going to be the amateurs, the desperate amateurs, and the people that wrote the RFP. Yeah. But I just don't think there's an ethical way to participate in the process at all because of the exploitation that it does to the firms that are playing the lottery. And look, you can always say, well, that's their problem, isn't it? Are they stupid? No, but are you taking advantage of their lack of experience? Are you taking advantage that they might not be sophisticated enough to understand their costs yet? Because you are getting the bottom of the barrel that who's responding, right?
Well,
and so, but how to respond? I would have like an RFQ pretty well set up and ready to go. And if you have any level of specialization, which I highly recommend that you do, like we have a handful of industries that we're really well qualified to help. This client happened to be in several of those intersecting industries. But because we kind of know where we play, we can have some information ready to go. Oftentimes we will direct them to the website or to LinkedIn or to our FAQ online. You know, somebody asks, hey, what does your ideal client look like? That's a totally fair question. And we have 18, 19 more of those in our FAQ. It's not that we don't want to give you our time. It's just that you get to a point in your career, you have a lot of people coming to you and you don't need every job, and you've already worked with Harley Davidson, and you know, you've been there and done that, and you have a process that you go through to make sure that you're a match with the company before you burn up a lot of their time, before you burn up a lot of my time. I find it to be a lot more polite and respectful. And it does allow me to evaluate you as a potential client, because I might be awesomely qualified to solve your problem, but I might not like you.
Yeah.
Well, I probably like you, but I don't like this other guy on your board who's part of the decision process. Or I think you have way too many people in your decision-making process. So it's like, I like all of you, I love all of you, but there's too many of you. You know, I mean, it's all these reasons why we might not be a match, right? If I don't know your budget, right? I'm playing guess what's in my head. Da 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 da. Wasting my time with this game. It's better to say, look, you know, here's a range, or let people do a little bit of discovery, because your budget's important, not because we're trying to get every penny out of you like you think, but because maybe you can't afford us, okay? Or maybe we're honest enough to say, whoa, you're spending way too much money. We just heard of a school, a chain of schools, spending $135,000 on Facebook ads.
Oh, wow.
What? You know, that's maybe once in my career that I was like, hey, that's too much money, but usually not, right? I mean, usually it's like, hey, we're going to have to get creative to be able to solve this problem because we don't have all the resources we need. That would be normal. So if we're playing guess what's in my head, again, it's like, I can't know if you're going to be a good match for my business. Right. And I've played a lot of guess what's in my head, by the way. I have been a contestant on that program.
Oh yeah.
Over, but not anymore.
And you're a music person too, so you probably could write the background music for it as well, or the theme song.
Absolutely,
right?
I can actually write that song.
Exactly.
But you know, so how do I respond? I mean, you make a choice for what's right for your company. I guess for me, sorry, we're trying to work all the controls here. Don't mind the man behind the curtain.
Uh-oh.
Because his stuff doesn't work. There we go. All right. You know, so this topic, I think, is inflammatory, which, you know, I like. You know, if I have any final thoughts, we roll our final thoughts.
Final thoughts.
So, final thoughts. We've got our funky little theme music going on, which, again, I give the credit to some guys that I perform with. We did this song one night out of the blue and made this little tune-up, and it's ended up being the theme for the podcast. So we'll listen to that as we go out. Final thoughts. I think that there are many better ways to hire expertise, and I think if you study up a little bit on specifically how to hire expertise, look up a guy named David Baker. David is awesome, David Baker, and he talks a lot about selling expertise. And do your homework a little bit, put the effort in, and if you need help, get some help, and you'll be able to make a great choice. There are plenty of excellent firms out there, and you can get the help you need, but you don't need to do an RFP. And I think if you're a responder to them, don't.
Yeah, agree with that.
I don't see an ethical way to participate in either part of any part of the process.
And my final thoughts would be, you know, if you're the organization sending them out, I totally agree with you. Don't do it. If you are going to do it, just know that you're probably not going to get the best people or solutions.
The best talent or best solutions, or it might just be, maybe nobody will guess that thing in your head. Maybe nobody will get it.
And if you're the service firm, my recommendation would be the more people that don't do it, the more the message will start to get out there where people will go, yeah, this is just an archaic way to do it.
Yeah, and I've seen that happen where they just didn't get much response, and maybe you're asking for too much. I don't know, but that's a decision for everybody to make for themselves. I think we've been clear in our position. I want to congratulate Bill on not getting too triggered. We did have the trigger warning up, and we always want to be careful of everyone's feelings. So we'll leave you with that today, and we'll see you next Thursday at 11 o'clock on B2B Marketing Mindset, where we talk about the issues that matter.
And liking, and don't forget to subscribe and check out the links in the comments. Learn more at b2bmarketingmindset.com.